Our guest, Dr. Joseph Castro, is one of 5 new presidents at California State University campuses in 2013 and is the first California native and Hispanic to assume the top post in the history of Fresno State. As he takes the reins of leadership, he'll be confronted with a myriad of issues. What can be done to make sure students are prepared to succeed in college? What can be done to help remove unnecessary roadblocks and help students graduate more quickly? What role will technology, and online instruction in particular, have on the cost and effectiveness of higher education in the future? What role will fundraising and athletics play at the university? And what role can or should a university play in improving the lives of those in the community, state, and nation? As he assumes the mantle as the 8th president in the history of California State University, Fresno, Dr. Castro addresses the near-term challenges as well as the long-term outlook for higher education in California and the San Joaquin Valley. Fresno State President Joseph Castro, a look ahead.
From Fresno, the Maddy Report, with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Keppler.
Welcome. For the first time in almost a quarter century, California State University Fresno is going to have a new president, Joe Castro. He follows in the footsteps of John Welty, the university's longest-serving president, who boosted Fresno State's image both academically and athletically. Welcome to the Maddy Report.
Thank you, Mark.
A quick editor's note. As university president, Joseph Castro is a member of the Maddy Institute Board of Directors. So first of all, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Thank you. Well, I'm from Hanford originally, just 40 miles south of Fresno, and as the 8th president, I'm also the first from California, first from the Valley. I have a wife and 3 kids. The oldest graduated from college at Berkeley, and the middle one, girl, is a senior in college at Humboldt State. And then we have our little guy, who's 2.5, who's here with
I'm curious,
us.
You're from the Valley, I'm from California. How do you think that helps you in terms of becoming the new president at a California State University school?
I think it helps a lot because it gives me, I think, the opportunity to really understand the Valley and to build partnerships more easily because I understand the culture here and the people.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife, Mary Castro, who's going to be designated as a university volunteer.
Yes.
And so people are probably wondering, what do those duties entail?
Well, she's going to be very helpful to me. She is going to attend events with me. She's going to represent the university at events around the Valley, different communities. She's going to work with staff to make sure that all of our public events go smoothly, and otherwise, very supportive of the university and of my presidency.
Yeah, it's a tremendous asset.
Yes.
You're getting a 2-for-1 deal, it sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, you've been working in your transition with former President John Welty. I assume he's giving you advice on the kinds of issues you might be dealing with. What kinds of advice, if you can say, what kinds of words of advice is he giving you? Has he been giving you?
Dr. Welty's been immensely helpful to me. We have met several times during the transition, and he has given me kind of the lay of the land in terms of issues that he dealt with, challenges, opportunities. And in terms of advice, he said, enjoy the process. He said almost every day is a great day.
Of course, he said that as he's walking out the door. I think there might have been some days he was...
Yeah, he was very honest about that there are some very difficult days, and I know that that's the case. But in general, he said that it's been a joy for him over 22 years, and he said enjoy the process.
Yeah, well, you've got several priorities.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about some of your priorities as the new president.
Yes. Well, my first priority is to listen and learn. And I think one thing that a new leader can do before they start making big changes in an organization is really to understand the culture and the complexities out there. So I'm going to start by doing that. But
just out of curiosity, how long do you think that process is going to take? I mean, before you get a good feel for where you should be going with that?
I think weeks and a few months, and then I'll begin to have a sense of where things are, and then it'll depend on the issue in terms of what kinds of changes we might want to undertake.
Mm-hmm. So your priorities then, you think going forward, one of the issues I know you've talked about is increasing on-time graduation.
Absolutely. We're going to focus a lot of attention on student access in the same way that Dr. Welty did, and my instincts are that we can do a lot better around the graduation rate, so I really want to see what we can do to move the needle there.
You also talked about partnering with community colleges to build pathways.
Yes.
Why is that important?
Well, as you know, a lot of our Valley students start out at a community college before they transfer, and it's important to me and to the university to make sure that we are welcoming to them. And so I've already been on the phone with a lot of the leaders throughout the Valley and to talk about ways in which we can strengthen transfer. And I think we'll be able to do that in the coming years. We have a record class of transfer students this fall.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And that number is probably just going to go up.
Yes, I think so.
So what about, you also mentioned in some of your opening remarks when you first came on board about helping drive the local economy. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I'd like to do is have Fresno State be part of the transformation of the Valley economy, to go from where we are now, which is a very successful economy built around agriculture, to one that anticipates changes that are going to occur technologically and economically, and to try to position ourselves to take advantage of those opportunities in the future.
Okay, well, when we come back, we're going to take an even closer look at some of President Castro's priorities as he begins his tenure as California State University Fresno president. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. Governor Brown has called on California's higher education systems to rein in costs, operate more efficiently, and get students to obtain their diplomas more quickly. New California State University President Joseph Castro is echoing many of those same themes. So one of the big challenges we talked about in the first segment was student preparation.
Yes.
There are about 60% of Cal State University students come to the university unprepared in math and writing.
Right.
And the problem is actually worse with minority populations. And Fresno State has a large minority population.
Yes.
So what can be done to make sure that students are prepared to succeed in college?
Well, I think that there's a lot of work that can be done with the K through 12 system around student preparation early on, and I would advocate for an even more robust set of partnerships between Fresno State and school districts around the Valley. I think that's the right medium and longer term approach. In the short term, I think we'll need to continue to have those kinds of courses to help students make that transition and to succeed as quickly as they can. But I think that the real opportunity for success here is building those stronger partnerships and making sure that students are prepared when they graduate from high school so that they can really come in and graduate in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's tough because they're not only, ramping it up to a higher level of education, but they maybe not have the base when they get to the university, which is tough on them.
It is, yeah.
And a lot of them are working too, so
yeah,
it's a challenge.
It's complex, that's for sure.
Another big challenge to improving higher education, and we talked about this a little earlier, and that is creating a smoother transition from from community colleges to four-year universities.
Right.
So what plans do you have to make that transition more seamless between community colleges and Fresno State?
Well, I've already been in phone conversations with several of the community college leaders, and at our level we've said we're going to make it as easy as possible for students to make that transition. I think that they deserve that from us as public institutions. So, what I'm interested in doing is understanding where some of those barriers are in talking to our faculty and deans and others at community colleges and the students themselves, and figuring out what we need to do in terms of removing those barriers so that students can do that more easily. I have a sister who graduated from Fresno State who transferred from College of Sequoias, and she was able to succeed. Took her a little longer than she might have wanted, but she did very well, and I think that's a great opportunity for many students.
Students are not just interested in this. Parents who are paying tuition, I'm sure, are very interested in that seamless transition.
You bet.
Another thing that has been talked about is these hard-to-get classes for students, and one solution being offered are online classes.
Yes.
According to the Oakland Tribune, the CSU is unveiling, quote, a radical new plan for online classes, unquote. Can you describe what's being rolled out?
Yeah, there's a CSU online initiative which has many CSUs participating, where they're offering certificates or online degrees. Fresno State has been actively involved in that. There's also the work that's going on with Udacity and edX and some other partners. I've worked very closely with Coursera and have developed a number of online programs at my former campus, UCSF. What I'm interested in doing is talking with the Academic Senate at Fresno State and the deans and kind of understanding where we are at in our development. And I know there are new degrees that are being planned, one in water, which is going to be immensely helpful, a new online master's degree that just received approval from WASC, and that will go live next year. I'd like to build on what we've been doing. I think that it works well for a number of students, but not for all. And I think the research shows that for some students, online education is not as effective. So we need to understand that better. And in the case where it's not as effective, maybe we don't encourage that for them.
And my understanding is that the CSU is talking about 36 fully online classes in high-demand areas like biology, physical, geography, statistics, astronomy, and business finance. So
right.
All those classes that students are trying to get, they can now get them online.
That's right, at any campus around the system.
And the governor's been pushing that initiative.
He has. Both CSU and the University of California systems have received some additional funding to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting when you talk about funding. It's budgets always show priorities.
Yeah.
And the governor has put $10 million in this initiative just for the CSU alone.
That's right.
So he clearly is interested in this. And what my research shows is about 15,000 to 20,000 students are expected to enroll. And just to give people a perspective, that's basically the size of another Fresno State.
That's
a little
right.
bit smaller, but that's a pretty good size number of students.
It's significant.
Yeah.
And I think given the challenge we have in trying to provide access for so many young people and adults, that we need to have options like this available.
The whole issue of online education hasn't gone without some criticism. San Jose State, for example, recently moved to suspend a highly touted collaboration with is it
Udacity?
Udacity,
That's right.
to cover low-cost 4-credit online classes after finding out that more than half of the students failed to pass.
Yeah.
And the New York Times had recently written an editorial saying that basically these kinds of classes can work, but they are problematic where the students are more challenged. And they specifically say these courses, quote, these courses would be questionable for first-time freshmen in the 23-campus California State University system, more than 60% of whom need remedial instruction in math and English. So, you were handling this as vice provost at UCSF. Is online education the answer to improving access, or are there other better answers?
I think it's one of the answers, and I think that we need to be careful not to put it in place too quickly. I think that's one of the lessons from the San Jose State experiment, and we need to be mindful of the fact that students learn in different ways. So we need to make sure that we don't force them into a solution that's not going to allow them to succeed, that we focus on success, whether that's traditional instruction, hybrid, or fully online.
Okay. Well, up next, we'll talk about some of the challenges that confront a president at a major university. Things like monitoring a Division I athletic program and meeting fundraising goals that seem to be growing exponentially with each year. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. In most communities, the university is one of the biggest fundraisers. It's no different in Fresno, where the university has recently completed a $200 million fundraising campaign. And with state funding less reliable and academic competition for the best and the brightest more intense, fundraising is increasingly seen as a critical part of a college president's job description. So former President John Welty was known as a very strong fundraiser.
Yes.
How would you approach fundraising, and do you have any goals that might even raise the bar?
Well, fundraising is going to continue to be very important for Fresno State. And you're right, President Welty and his team did an incredible job, even surpassed their initial target. So that does set the bar high for me and for my colleagues. But, my feeling is that it's all about friend raising first and developing close relationships. And I started doing that the day of my appointment. I began calling a lot of alumni and friends and just getting on the phone with them, introducing myself. I've been getting together with several for lunch or dinner, and understanding kind of what they love about Fresno State and what they also would like to see in terms of any changes to make it better.
And that's a really big difference for CSUs. You know, 20, 30 years ago, fundraising really wasn't a big part of the job. And
right.
Increasingly, that's the margin of excellence, it seems.
I think it is. My search committee said at least 30% and maybe 50% of my time will be spent on this, so I go into it with my eyes open.
I hope you like chicken dinners. Let's talk about some of the short-term maybe needs of the university. Do you see any particular needs that you'd want to really focus your immediate fundraising efforts on?
Yeah, I think so. One has to do with our athletic program. I think to the extent that I can get more of our close friends who love our athletic program to help us to endow some of the sports, that's going to strengthen the athletic program and strengthen the overall university budget, because it will ensure that those sports programs get the support they need and make sure that the campus's other resources are not increasing over time. I'd like to really do my best to make sure that those sports programs are as close to being privately funded as possible.
You know, you're looking at a potential top 25 football team this year.
Yeah.
My brother went to the University of Connecticut, and they were very successful. When their sports teams were successful, a lot of money flowed to the university. So there's a connection between athletics and academics.
Absolutely.
What about the long-term strategic goals of the university? Are there any fundraising efforts you want to focus on there?
Well, you know, we've got to think about, after this campaign has just concluded, what makes sense for the future. And I still need to talk to our faculty and friends and students to develop a much clearer sense of it. My instinct suggests something around student success would make a lot of sense, that people want to help our students and our students want to succeed.
And one of the things you got a little press on recently was tablets.
Yes.
Thinking that we should go in that direction. Why?
Yeah, you know, again, I tie it to student success. My observation is that students at Fresno State, because of their backgrounds, they don't always have the tools that they need to succeed. And we have loaner programs and so forth that have been very successful. I'm interested in seeing if we can get them that tool, and with that tool they'll be able to download the materials for their classes. They won't need a backpack anymore. I believe they'll save money over time. We'll amortize the cost of the laptops over a few years, so it begins to be quite modest. And then finally it gives them a chance to write their papers. They won't even need a laptop.
You know, it's interesting, you know, I'm going to date myself here. You know, I was, doing research with card catalogs and going from library to library, in graduate school. And those days seem to be long gone. Everything is accessible through the internet now, and so if you have that ability, you can really reach out, and it's amazing the information that's out there, obviously.
Absolutely.
Let me go back, talk a little about athletics for a second. As I mentioned, that's a big part of the donor base to a university.
Yes.
With athletic success, though, there's a concern that maybe the monitoring issue of how do you make sure that these Division I programs are properly monitored and there's proper oversight.
Yes.
How are you going to do that at a school at Fresno State?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, Dr. Welty, Thomas Bay, the athletic director, and the entire campus has done a wonderful job over the last 6-7 years in making sure that our compliance practices are exactly where they need to be. I want to continue to build off of that and keep the program as one that wins with integrity. And I think if we focus on making sure the integrity part is handled right and do everything we can to attract the best players and coaches and staff, we'll be very successful.
Okay, great. Well, when we come back, we'll take a look at the future of higher education and what it could mean for California and the San Joaquin Valley. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. The best universities are not just places where faculty go to research and teach, students go to learn, and alumni go to attend football games. The best universities also work to improve their city, region, state, and nation. So you often hear about professors living in an ivory tower. What can you do as college president to improve the town-gown connection and make sure that what the university does is relevant to improving the lives of those in its community, state, and nation?
Sure. Well, Fresno State is part of that land grant history that's so important, and I think Dr. Welty and everyone else has done a great job of building relationships throughout the valley, valuing community engagement. I want to build from that. I know all the towns up and down the valley. I've already met with several of the mayors to talk with them about how Fresno State can help, and they're very interested in working with us. So I think it's a matter of, for me, leading the way, getting out there in the valley, understanding those issues, and then making sure the university can be as productive as possible in dealing with those issues, challenges, and seizing opportunities.
We talked earlier about how the university can help promote economic development. Are there specific things you would do in that regard? I mean, we have an office at the university of something called the Community Office of Community and Economic Development.
That's right. Mike Dozier is the head of that.
And so, what kinds of things do you see them doing to promote economic development?
Well, they've done a great job already.
I just saw recently they have a certificate program now to help people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I've been out there for a couple months now during the transition, meeting community and business leaders. And what I hear from them is that Fresno State's done a really good job of reaching out to them. I also hear that they think we can do better in some key areas. Tomorrow I'm going to be sitting down with some of our top agricultural leaders from around the nation to hear from them, and to, after hearing from them, think through some strategies that we can develop, quickly and in the medium term to address those needs. So that's obviously one area of focus. But I want to look at technology and the ways in which we might be able to support the Valley's economy through the use of technology in all different sectors. We've got wonderful schools of business, as you know, and health, and we serve so many different people that way, education.
So the water issue could be potentially very huge.
Yeah, and as you know, we hosted the Water Summit last Saturday. We had the leaders from all around the country there, and I think people were very impressed with our faculty. We have the water cohort of faculty, a really impressive group I met a few days ago, and so I think there are opportunities, like you say, to really build off what's happened.
I know it was Mark Twain or someone said that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over, and so you're positioned well on that issue. What about your biggest upcoming challenges and opportunities that you see being a president of a California State University? What do you see as your biggest challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, I think that the student success challenge is a big one. You alluded to it with your question about preparation. I think we need to figure out how to do that better and in order to increase graduation rates. The campus itself is built on an old infrastructure, 50-plus years old, and so there are some issues there that I'm learning about. We'll have to develop some plans pretty quickly to address those. So that's going to be another near-term challenge. And then just the usual stuff of trying to recruit and retain the most talented students and faculty and staff.
Yeah, that is a very big challenge. What about the metrics of how a university president should be judged? What do you think of the fair, what should people be looking at to determine whether or not you're successful?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, it's living up to the mission as a public university. Are we educating students well? Are we providing the applied research that people expect from us in terms of the quality of research?
And when you say applied research, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. I think it ranges from working in schools with young people, making sure, as I said earlier, I think our research and education could help us in terms of the preparation issue for students, so when they get to us, they're more well prepared. So working with teachers, working with students and families. The water issue is certainly one. Strategies to use water more effectively, strategies to get more water out of our system, that sort of thing.
So you went to Stanford and Berkeley, and that's where they're doing kind of research, but at a school like a Cal State Fresno State, it's the application of that research to the real world.
Exactly.
That's really what the focus is.
That's exactly right.
We've only got about a minute left in the segment. Ask a last question.
Sure.
And this will probably be played when you eventually leave as college president. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I think at the most basic level, I want the university to be a lot better off when I leave than it is today. And things are going pretty well today, so I definitely don't want to screw it up. I want it to be more successful. I want our students to be more successful. I want our faculty to be successful. You know, our research funding has been flat for the last several years. I'd like to try to improve on that. And then our engagement. I'd like to see us you know, as actively engaged in the community as possible.
Well, that's a full plate.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank California State University President Joe Castro for joining us. If you want to stay current with local politics and policy, you can sign up for our award-winning and free e-newsletter, The Maddy Daily, just by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org.
And now, another perspective.
I've been asked many times what the main factors were in the selection of Dr. Castro for president of Fresno State. The advisory committee, of which I was a member, recommended 3 finalists to the trustees, among them Dr. Castro. All 3 of them had great credentials and experience. And I can't speak for the advisory committee, but I can tell you that the factors that caused me to be so enthusiastic about Dr. Castro were the strong recommendations from so many people with whom he worked within the UC system, including former UC President Mark Yudof. His intimate knowledge of the Valley, the sincerity and passion for making things better for all of us in the Valley, and his humility. The fact that he was a Californian when in its 108-year history, Fresno State had never been led by a Californian was also an influence on my thinking. The fact that he grew up in the Valley meant that he would have a special understanding of the Valley's issues and unique culture, and our kids would benefit from having such a great role model. Like so many of the kids that attend Fresno State, Joe was the first person in his family to go to college. And now he's president of Fresno State. All of the finalists were very different from Dr. Welty, but humility was a trait I thought Dr. Castro and Dr. Welty had in common. It's an attribute that I think has already served him well as he is being introduced to the Fresno State community. I'm thrilled with the legacy that Dr. Welty left behind. Fresno State, which is where both my daughters and their husbands went to school, is a source of pride to all of us in the Valley. And I'm excited about what the future will bring. Where Dr. Welty had to struggle in the last few years against financial instability caused by Sacramento, Dr. Castro is coming in at a time of greater financial stability, which will enable us to build an even better university. I know President Castro is coming in with some important goals about how to improve graduation rates, how to make Fresno State an even more important engine for economic prosperity in the Valley, how to combine traditional and online education, how to build on the success of our athletic program, and so on. But right now, he is in listening mode. That's where his humility will serve him well. He doesn't assume he has all the answers. He's a great listener, eager to get advice that will help take Fresno State to the next level. We are fortunate to have found someone who I'm confident will be a great successor to Dr. Welty. For the Maddy Report, I'm Pete Weber, CSUF Presidential Search Committee member.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the Maddy Institute, the California Channel, Casey, or Valley PBS. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions shared in the Maddy Report, visit our website at valleypbs.org/Maddy.
This is Mark Keppler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.